So we're not done with BMP. Next to me, I have Thomas Holtenbach, who is going to talk about expanding internet routing visibility with BMP. I'm very interested to see well, how I can use this for my own network and maybe at work. So please take it away.
Thank you for the introduction and good afternoon, everyone. So today I'm going to talk about BGP monitoring and BMP. So you probably all know this BGP monitoring tool. It's the NLNOG looking glass, and perhaps you are using it on a daily basis. It's useful to verify that the routes to your prefixes, they are good. And these BGP monitoring tools, they are possible because network operators, they are willing to share their routes. So there are many other monitoring tools like that. And historically, there are two main BGP data collection platforms. It's Rypris and RoadViews. And each of these platforms, they collect data from about 1,500 BGP routers that we also call vantage points. And then they store the data and they share it with the community so we can build these monitoring tools and we can also do research. At the University of Strasbourg in France, we decided to build our own BGP route collection platform, and it's called bgproutes.io. So it's a new platform because we just launched it a few months ago. And the main difference between bgproutes.io and RIS and RoadViews is that we try to prioritize coverage, so the percentage of ASCs that share the data, whereas RIS and RoadViews, they tend more to prioritize data retention, so they want to keep the data forever, and this is very useful, for instance, for researchers, even if that means maybe not pairing with some routers because that would just make too much data to store. We also say it's a next generation BGP route collection platform for different reasons. One of them is because we don't just have our own peers, it's because we also take all data that is publicly available and we aggregate all this data into one single repository. So there are other reasons why we say it's a next-gen platform, but today I don't have the time to go into those details because it's not the goal of this presentation. So if you're interested, you can just watch our NLNOG 94 presentation. But for now, I have to move to the actual content of this presentation, which will be about more like BMP. So that's the outline of this presentation. So first, I will show you why when we operate a BGP data collection platform, it's hard to increase coverage. And then I will explain you why BMP can help here. And then I will show you that if you're interested, you can connect with BMP to bgproutes.io. You can monitor your session, and you can also use the data if you want. So let's start with why increasing coverage is hard. So the first challenge is to actually motivate network operators to peer and to share the data. And today, the BGP monitoring tool that exists, they seem to work fine. So there is no direct incentives for operators to continue peering and sharing more data. And the problem is that today, if we look at RIS and RoadViews, they only peer with about 1% of the autonomous system. That's not a very high number. And besides, this number has not increased over the last 2 decades. So they are only getting data for about 1% of the autonomous system for more than 2 decades now. For bgproutes.io, in 1 year, we could get about 40 peers. It's good, but we need many, many more peers if we want to get accurate BGP monitoring tools. So even when we convince an operator to share the data, there is another problem, is that what happens is that that operator will set up a BGP session with the platform, and BGP typically hides routes. So we won't see all the routes that that operator could actually share. And here I want to illustrate the problem. So imagine you have a BGP router here in gray, and that BGP router peers with some ASCs, here 3 ASCs, so AS1, AS2, and AS3. So that routers receives BGP route updates from these autonomous systems. These BGP route updates, they are arriving, and first they might be filtered or denied by those inbound filters. The updates that are permitted, they then go through the decision process, and then the RIB is calculated. And finally, the best paths, they are announced to the peers if they are not filtered by the outbound filters. So that's really like the typical BGP processing pipeline in a BGP router. And now if we imagine that this BGP router peers with a data collection platform like BGP routes.io, like RIS or RouteViews, well, we will see the best and non-filtered path. That is great. However, we will miss all the routes that are denied by the filters, and we will also not see the backup path. And this is really a pity because the operator agrees to share this data. It's just that this data is not sent over the BGP session. BGP ATPass could help because in fact it can announce backup path. The problem though is that first of all, BGP ATPass does not announce the routes that are denied. And besides, with BGP ATPass, even if we see the backup route, it's hard to know from where the backup routes they are actually coming, from which peers they are coming. And when we use data to make analysis or to do research, we need to know where the data come from. We need to have accurate and precise data. And so this is why BGP ATPass can help, but it's not really the fundamental solution to this problem. And this is now why I want to introduce BMP and explain why here it can be the solution. So BMP has two main advantages over BGP when used for monitoring. So first of all, it provides all route updates on a per peer basis. So we really know from which peer the routes come from. Second, it also provides updates at possibly all stages in the BGP processing pipeline. So basically, it gives us a lot of flexibility over what we want to share, and we can also export and decide with a very fine granularity what sort of data we want to export. And this is very useful in this case. And on top of this, it's also very simple to configure. It's just a few lines of configuration in your router. So when we take our previous example here, so there are a total of 5 stages in a BGP router. So the first stage is on the left here. It's just when all the routes, they arrive before they are filtered. Then there is a second stage just after the inbound filters. Then there is a first stage, which is called local RIB. This is like the best path in the RIB. And finally, there are 2 other stages before and after the outbound filters on the right here. So if that BGP router has a BMP session with a data collection platform, we can really decide which data we want to send and at any of these stages here that I have shown. In the context of BGP routes.io, what we recommend to do is to export the edge in pre-stage only. So this is the stage on the left here. Why we recommend to do this? Because this is just the stage where we see all the data before they are filtered. So we will see all the routes. So that's the best for us. Besides, if you just do this, users will also not be able to infer your routing policies. And that's probably something you also would like. Because in fact, if you also share, for instance, the local RIB, then we can infer which routes you are denying. Perhaps that's not something you want to do. But our infrastructure supports any stage. You can even send multiple stages. It's fine, but we just recommend sending data for that stage. So now, imagine you do this. What happens here? So now instead of having just one vantage point, if you had a BGP session, Now with this BMP session, it's like if we had 3 vantage points, because in fact, we really see the routes that are coming from IS1, IS2, and IS3. So it's like if we had 3 BGP sessions with IS1, IS2, and IS3, but instead of 3 BGP sessions, we have just 1 BMP session. So it's less effort for operators, more data for users, and this is why BMP here can help. Okay, so now if you are convinced that BMP can help, I will show you how you can connect to BGP routes.io with BMP. Well, it's actually simple because we have automated everything. You can just go on the website. You then just have to log in, and you can authenticate using your peering DB account. And then you just press on the Start Peering with Us button. And then you will end up in a page where there is a very simple form that you need to fill. Basically, just give us your IP address, your SN, and you can also say if you don't want us to store and share data for some of your peers. We are doing this because sometimes with BMP, I mean, for some routers, you cannot say for which peers you want to export the data. It's either you export data for all peers or none of them. So here, at least, we give you some flexibility for that. Okay, so once you have submitted that form, you just have to configure BMP on your router. It's very simple. We even provide examples to help you, but it's just a few lines of configuration. Okay, so once you have set up the BMP session, you can monitor it. So you just click on the Your VP button on the top right corner here, and you arrive on this page. And this is, for instance, what you would see if you are RGNet. RGNet is the network operated by Randy Bush, and he agreed to use his example here in this presentation. So Randy has a few BGP sessions with us, but today we don't really care about the BGP sessions. We care more about the BMP sessions at the bottom. So he has 2 BMP sessions with us. And when we look at the details here, we see, for instance, in this column, the number of vantage points that are derived from these BMP sessions. And for instance, in the second BMP sessions here, you see that we are actually getting like 10 vantage points. So we are getting the data from 10 peers, but from only 1 BMP session. And this is great. So that's typically what you would see also if you start to connect with BGP routes.io. Okay, so now if you want, you can also use the data. You can use the data because all the data we collect is publicly available. We make it publicly available because we want it to power the next generation of BGP monitoring tools. And for that, we have 3 ways you can access the data. So first, there is an MRT archive. That's a very standard way to access the data. We also have an API. That's rather unique. And finally, you have a WebSocket stream if you want also to get the data in real time. So depending on the use cases, you may want to use one way or another. But just for this we also have Python interfaces to simplify your life if you want to use the data. So you can just use our Python library. And now I'm just going to illustrate you how you can use the API, for instance. And what we try to do here is we want to make things transparent for the user. So the user doesn't really care if the data is collected from a BGP or a BMP session because it's in the end, it's just going to be route updates. So that's what we try to do here with the API. So everything is transparent. There are just 4 endpoints, vantage points. So you use it, for instance, to get the vantage points you want. So you first call these vantage points, and then you take the input and you give it, you take the output and you give it as input to the other endpoints like updates, RIB, and topology, depending on what you want to do. So this is just a quick example. So imagine you want to build a looking glass, for instance, like the NLNOG looking glass. Well, first of all, you would just have to import the PyBGP routes API. And then you just call the vantage points function, and you specify which vantage points you want to take. So for instance, you want to take all the vantage points from bgp-ros.io, from RIS, and from PCH. And then you just put these vantage points as input to the rib function. You also specify a date and also some prefixes. And then you will get the answer in a few seconds. And here you don't really need to care if the vantage points they are from a BGP sessions or from a BMP sessions. It's all transparent. Now, if you care about that, there is a parameter, peering protocol, and you can say you just want the vantage points that are derived from a BMP session. But in practice, you don't really need that. Unless you really want to measure something about BMP, you probably don't need that parameter. Okay, so that concludes my presentation. So this is just a quick table that summarizes the pros and cons of BMP versus BGP when used for monitoring. If you're interested, of course, you can peer with us. Now I'm happy to take your questions, and we're also happy to take any feedback, any positive but also negative feedback, because we are really in the process of implementing this platform. So any also comment or things you don't like, we would like to hear it so we can improve the platform even more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I see we have one question. Robert.
Wow, this mic is high. Katja is asking on IRC, have you thought about saving historical data by uploading it to the Internet Archive?
So storing historical data. So we are already storing data we collect, so historical data, either in the MRT archive or in the API as well. You can query data like past data. It's not just like real time. So if you want data for the last few days or whatever, you can also use the API. For now, the API, we only keep data for 7 days because it consumes some hardware resources on our servers. But soon we will be able to support like multiple months of data. It's just that this is a research project, so we have like a tiny funding. But like we have spending a lot of time to make optimizations in our database. So sooner or later we will be able to support like multiple months of data. So that's yeah.
Hey, my name is Victor. I'm from Booking.com. I'm curious, if it's not a secret, what do you use as a collector for a BMP?
If you mean internally or?
Yes.
Yeah, of course you could use. So now it's not the main use case, but
no, I mean in your case, what do you use to collect BMP data?
Yeah, we use our own code. So in fact, we could have used Rotunda, for instance, who was presented right before. But in our case, we wanted to something that is custom to just what we need, especially in terms of scalability. I'm not saying that Rotunda doesn't scale. I'm just saying that Rotunda is a very generic tools, whereas we try to build a tool that is very specific to exactly what we want to do. So we have a small C code that just gets the data either from BMP or from BGP, and it just does what it needs to do so we can scale and we can get data from thousands of routers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks again. I already have a BGP session set up, so I should also set up some BMP sessions as well.
Yes.
Thanks again.
Thank you.